Hello, my name is Aubrey Adoons. I'm a Human Rights Advocacy Officer at Tshimoloho Development Care and Support. What I basically deal with is the violations of human rights in the legal side of it. So I am part of the civil society for law in the law and human rights sector. So our organization basically works with key vulnerable populations. So we deal with LGBTQI, gender-based violence victims, women and children, boys, and we also deal with P-words. These are people who inject drugs. So we are a place whereby we offer psychosocial support for people who need that, and we help people to reintegrate with their families where there's been stigma and discrimination or a certain violation that has occurred internally within the family. We intervene in that manner. We also provide HIV testing services and counseling, and we also help people with getting their medication. So if you are either needing to be on antiretroviral treatment, we assist you with that. If you need to be on PrEP, which is pre-exposure prophylaxis, which prevents a person from contracting HIV virus, we also assist you in being initiated in that as well. So that is basically what our organization does. So yeah, in light of the work that we do, life before the COVID pandemic was just life as we knew it. Things were manageable. We were able to go anywhere and do everything that we needed to do, and we were able to address a lot of issues. So what we basically were doing before the pandemic is that we were assisting. We focus on different key vulnerable populations at a time. So basically, because there's a lot in the let's say in the LGBTQI key vulnerable population, there's a lot that happens there. There's a lot of victims. There's a lot of violations that happen there. Do you understand? So before the pandemic, we were focusing on MSMs. We're focusing on men who are sleeping with men, and those men, they're not necessarily gay, but they sleep with other men. So now those ones, the problem with them is that we identified that they don't feel comfortable going to clinics. They don't feel comfortable testing. They don't feel comfortable describing their lifestyles in public. So one of our funders saw that, and they came to us and said, in the Sedibeng region, there is no organization that is assisting MSMs. So basically what we did is that we reached out to them because we had to. We reached out to them, and we got a very positive response. To this day, they feel very comfortable to coming to us and talking to us about their problems and everything. And we see as to how there is an interlink between how you'd find a husband who is also an MSM. The GBV cases that we're dealing with, the violations that we're dealing with before, I would say compared to now, they were much less. Now they have skyrocketed. Mental health issues have increased. So that is like the thing, that's why I'm saying, like the reason it's how things were before and how I'm just looking at them as to how they are now. Because there's obviously pre-pandemic, there's during the pandemic and post-pandemic. So basically, during the pandemic, a lot of households suffered. And but what I found out was that a lot of, let's say the LGBTQI, they found themselves a bit safer because they were always at home. But then those who were violated by their own families felt a different story. So do you understand that in those cases you find that people had a different experience? Though no experience was the same with everybody. I would say for me, what was therapeutic for me was basically cooking. That was like my be-all and end-all. Like by this time during the pandemic, I would have cooked the third pot. I cooked and I baked and I cooked and I baked. I don't know what advert was that. There's an advert that did that. We cooked. Yeah. We baked. We cooked and baked. That's what I did throughout the pandemic. So it is one of those things, but then it was psychologically and mentally taxing for a lot of people. A lot of people found it very strenuous for them. I would say for us, what helped us a lot was we got closer with our neighbors. We would talk over the fence, and we did that. We really did that. And what was scary about during the pandemic is when you lost a close person. That was the scariest. It couldn't necessarily just one of those things of who's next. Who is next? So that was extremely scary. And the mere fact that personally, me and my loved ones were able to survive the pandemic, it was a great relief. Like, I'm in gratitude about that every single day. I'm in gratitude that we're able to see something that was so scary, that like debilitated presidents who did not know what to do, and were able to survive such, because this is unprecedented. It had never happened before. So there's no blueprint as to, okay, well, this is how this started and this is how we're going to sort this out when it happens to us. So it was an extremely mentally straining and draining part of life, which for the longest of time I'll never forget. It is the scariest thing I have ever encountered. I mean, a cough used to scare me. Now, when someone tells you that they are struggling to breathe, we take breathing so lightly. Like, after that, like, I'm sorry for even just laughing. We take breathing so lightly. So when you think of someone saying that I cannot breathe, it is a mission to breathe. It is extremely scary. Because you see yourself as just, sometimes you're not even conscious of your lungs, like, doing that movement. So it was, the realities of it were very scary, and I tried to distract myself as much as I can to not confront it with that realness, because I think also it was going to debilitate me, which is something that I also didn't want to see happen to me. Do you understand? So it was really quite it was quite a scene. And now, post the pandemic, we are dealing with a certain level of hopelessness with people, because now the pandemic affected the economy, the pandemic affected jobs, the pandemic affected businesses, and most of small businesses. SMMEs struggled during the pandemic. Some of them, they had to close down. People lost jobs, whereby after the pandemic, they could not go back to them because the companies were saying, we have no way of being able to compensate you. So now you must understand, when one person loses a job, a family is affected financially. Children, school, house, food, basic living necessities. So a lot of families started struggling with that, with the loss of jobs, loss of businesses, and those that are trying. It's 2023 and there's still those who are still trying to get onto their feet. Do you understand? So that was an extremely daunting thing, that realization that started happening after the pandemic. The reality of, okay, the world crashed. So what do we do now? How do we get back to life? How do we get back to the things that we were used to before? It was and people are still struggling with it now. People are still suffering from the ramifications of COVID. So, and there's a lot of hopelessness, and the increase in mental health issues is because there was a rise in depression, there was a rise in suicide across the board. Do you understand? Based on people trying to get back. And this time around, not that suicide or depression has an age group, but most of the working class, people that you thought they were okay, are the ones who started suffering depression, are the ones who started committing suicide. I mean, if someone knew that if I buy groceries for 3,000 Rand, it will last me for a month, only for them to buy the same amount, to use the same amount for their groceries, for those things to only last them half the month. And then they have to see to fit as to how they're going to do with their children and their families towards the end. So that is one of those things that became extremely scary. And that is how a lot of people have been dealing with trying to get back to, trying to understand and make it work, basically. To like, okay, look, this is the situation we dealt with. Let's make it work. Let's do it right. And people are getting better. But now we are really focusing on the fact that mental health issues are on a rise due to what people went through emotionally over the pandemic.